Hey, this is Austin Harman Mixes, and welcome to episode number 2 of my podcast. During this episode, I am going to cover my recent trip to Thibideaux, Louisiana. There is a video that's going to come out about this trip very soon, but I did want to kind of share my thoughts with you on the podcast first. It was a fantastic trip, but first, let me tell you about a couple of things. First and foremost, if you're looking for a last-minute Christmas gift, if you're listening to this before the holidays as it's being recorded, austinharmanmixes.com/merch, you can find all kinds of different cool audio people gifts with some cool sayings designed by yours truly. Secondly, if you missed episode 1, please go back and listen to that original episode. I shared some fantastic stories from my life about becoming a professional audio engineer, and it was such a joy to record, and I hope that you enjoy episode 1. But this is episode 2. Just so you know, I do have some great people lined up to join me on this podcast, because right now it is just me, just off to the camera here if you're seeing this on YouTube, or just off to my left if you're listening. I do have another chair and another setup for some additional people to join on the podcast, which I am very excited about. There were some scheduling conflicts during the recording of this podcast. I did not want to wait to get it out for you, but do know that I am actively lining up some people to participate on this podcast with me, and I cannot wait for what's to come there. But this is episode 2, so let's go ahead and get into it and kick off. I just got back at the time of the recording of this podcast. It is Wednesday. I just returned from Thibideaux, Louisiana on Sunday night late. I actually will step you through the whole trip over this episode if you would allow me to, and please do stay with me. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy this content. But it was a phenomenal trip. I got back very late Sunday night, actually Monday morning technically, which I'll get to that later here in the story. And, every time I get to go out there and visit with the church, it's such a pleasure. And the reason for that is that, every church out there is different, and we all believe in the same God and the same Jesus. But the way that manifests itself within different organizations, different bodies, different cultures, different people groups, it's such a fascinating thing to see and to get to experience. And I'm incredibly grateful and honored for that opportunity. And let me just kind of explain to you how it came about. A couple of weeks ago, I was actually driving, and I received a call. Well, first and foremost, I actually received an email from one of you out there. Shout out to Ajaki. Thank you for sending me said email. And he said, hey, I saw your channel. I saw that you're pretty good with the Allen and Heath avantis. And, I'd like you to come out and help us because we're having some trouble with our setup. And I was like, well, sounds great. So we got on the phone, and while I'm on the phone, Ajaki actually subscribed to the channel with him. So that was fantastic. Thanks for that. And Ajaki said, we're kind of having some trouble. I think you just really need to come down here. And, I love traveling, don't get me wrong, but I do want to make sure that we're taking care of the Lord and we're taking care of his church. And I said, well, Key, can maybe we could try to solve this over FaceTime, before we commit to a full travel. He said, no, I think you need to come down here. So I said, okay, this is what it's going to be. Whenever I travel for churches, I have a standard kind of offering that I do. With travel, I try and keep costs in the minimum. But I kind of explained what the process would be for me to travel, which involves me booking the travel and then subsequently, providing an estimate and so on and so forth. So a lot of logistics there to figure out. And I said, well, how fast do you want to go with this? And I think at the day, it was like Monday or Tuesday. And he was like, well, as soon as we can. So I sent him travel dates for the following weekend and the weekend after, which happened to be right before Thanksgiving. And, I had some other travel at the time that I was doing So I wasn't actually able to travel other than those 2 days that I sent. Otherwise, we were going to have to wait till after Thanksgiving. And, I didn't hear back from from the church for a little while. And so I was like, well, okay, maybe they kind of moved on, or maybe they got it figured out. And then as I was sitting there watching the Oklahoma State Big 12 championship, I got an email back from Key and the team, and they said, hey, we'd really like you to come down. Does this date work? And we somewhat quickly got things figured out from a logistics perspective, and then we subsequently booked the trip, and I booked it for this past weekend. So very exciting thing. And, anytime I do travel to a church, I always offer a discount on the service rate if I can film a video for that. And I did actually film a video. Right now it's in the editing process, which seems to be a big bottleneck for me. I did actually see one of your comments out there. You were saying, hey, Austin, you promised this video on how to mix loud a couple of weeks ago and it's still not out. What the heck are you doing? Why is it not out? And I was like, I've been working on it for a while, but life kind of gets away from me and I haven't been able to get it out. But I promise I am working on it. I will try and get those videos out as soon as I can for you. Well, that trip was amazing. We started out on Friday of this past week, and actually, due to some scheduling conflicts, I had to actually take the early morning flight into New Orleans. Thibideaux, Louisiana is where I was headed. New Orleans is the next closest airport. If you look up Thibideaux on the map, Thibideaux is, really kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's about 20 miles if you drew a straight line from the city to the Gulf of Mexico. And Louisiana is full of marshland, so there's really water everywhere. So it's kind of a loose interpretation to say that it's 20 miles from the water because the water is right there. So I flew into New Orleans, and I kind of set up camp there in New Orleans for a little while to take care of some other work. And it came around time for lunch, and I sat down in the French Quarter and had some fish at a restaurant. It was called some kind of bistro or something to that effect. If you're from New Orleans and you have a food recommendation or something that you would like to say about New Orleans food, drop that in the comment or send me an email, sales@thepenn.group. I'd love to hear from you and your foodie adventures in the New Orleans area. Anyway, so I sat down for the lunch, and this place was packed, and I sat at the bar, which I typically do whenever I travel solo. And funnily enough, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't do any of that stuff. So I'm sitting at the bar, a little bit fish out of water, pun intended, and this place was slammed. And in the French Quarter is very famous for being a kind of a big time party scene. So there was bachelorette parties and bachelor parties, and people just getting hammered on Friday afternoon at 2:00 or whatever time it was. And I kind of struck up a conversation with the local there, and he said, well, where are you headed? And I said, well, I'm heading to Thibideaux. And he said, oh, that's a nice area. And we kind of got to talking a little bit, and you'd be surprised at how nice people are in Louisiana. Very, very nice people. East Coasters, I live in Ohio, are kind of known as to be jerks sometimes, and it's definitely nice to get down into an area that's got good people and where the people are sweet. But anyway, so I headed out of the restaurant, and I went down to Thibideaux, which was an hour and a half drive from New Orleans, even though it was only about 55 miles. And over the pathway to get down to Thibideaux, you have to cross the Mississippi River, which, if you're not familiar with geography so much, the Mississippi River is very grand. It's absolutely enormous. The biggest river I've ever seen, bar none. And just to cross it is quite the feat. And you go up real high, and there's these enormous bridges and stuff. And the Mississippi River is a boating channel that's used for freight all the way up well into Missouri and beyond. So it's kind of a major artery. But anyway, so you go over the Mississippi, and then you kind of get on a 2-lane road that I took forever and ever. And it was well into the night by the time I got to to the location. And Thibideaux is actually kind of linked up with another town called Houma, and those kind of make up the same statistical metropolitan area. And it's about a town of probably about 40,000. And so I went down to Houma, which was where the hotel that I was going to stay in was at. And I was very hungry, so I checked into the hotel and decided to go get some food. And anytime I travel, I always try to eat something local. So I looked at the map and discovered that there was a place nearby called Big Mike's Barbecue. Somebody in Thibideaux, Houma area, go tell the people at Big Mike's that Austin Harman Mixes gave them a shout out on YouTube, because man, oh man, this place slapped, guys. I'm telling you what, it was easily the best barbecue I've ever had. Absolutely enormous ribs, and they had the most lovely sausage that I ate. Oh, I was real happy after I left it. But anyway, so I ate some Big Mike's, and I had connected with Key, and he said, "Hey, buddy, don't worry about coming in tonight. We'll take care of everything tomorrow. Why don't you go ahead and get some rest?" I'd been up since like 3 o'clock Eastern, so I was getting pretty tired at that point. So I retired in the hotel, and the next morning got up and decided to head down to Thibideaux. So it's about a 30-minute drive-ish, and there's just something about that area of Louisiana that's just really incredible. First and foremost, it doesn't look like anything anywhere else in America. If you go out to the west, like I traveled to Phoenix, Arizona to go visit Anu earlier this year. And going out there, there's big, beautiful mountains, and everything's rocky and well-kept and everything. In Louisiana, it's a swamp. So there's like big, gigantic trees, and everything's overgrown, and it literally looks like you're on a tropical island in the middle of the ocean. And it was incredibly humid and incredibly just like, wow, humid, hits you right in the face. And as I'm driving down the road on the phone with my lovely wife, I'm driving past original plantation houses from well into the 1800s, and just big mossy swamp trees and sugar cane as high as the eyes could see going up on the side of the road. And Louisiana is built on a swamp, so all the houses there are kind of built up on stilts. So you have the ground, and then there's purlins, and then those houses are kind of built up off the ground so they don't flood. And just such a different place and different experience than you get anywhere else. And as I was driving to the church is called House of Prayer. You can actually look up their YouTube channel if you wanted to go search for it. House of Prayer, Thibideaux, Louisiana. In the deep south, so far south that I was close enough that you could get in a boat, drive into the canal in Thibideaux, and drive straight to the ocean, right from the canal in Thibideaux. That's how close we are to the water. Granted, it's 20 miles, but I mean, it's real close. And it's not pretty water either, not like a white sand beach that you would think about, like, vacation oriented. Like it's a little grody. But anyway, nonetheless, very different lifestyle. And I was expecting, when House of Prayer called me, I always do my research. I always am prepared for wherever I go. And as a part of my research, I'll watch the live stream and kind of get a feel for the vibe of the church and kind of what they're going for. But, I was not prepared for what I saw. I genuinely was not. And, I pulled up into the lot and saw the sign. And let me tell you what I saw. But first, I'm going to take a quick water break here. Shout out to Fiji Water. And one of my goals, by the way, for this podcast is I think it's more authentic if you get a totally uncut version of me. So I will shoot this in one take as often as I can. So this is all off the dome, no editing as we talk through this story. But thanks for sticking with me. Hope you're enjoying these podcasts. If you have a suggestion, by the way, for something that you would like me to discuss on the pod, or a guest you think that I should bring onto the podcast, do let me know in the comments. Send me an email, sales@Penn Group. Anyway, so I pulled up to the House of Prayer Church Saturday morning, and I walked in and met Ajaki there, and I was really blown away, straight out of the gate. Just such friendly people. And Ajaki had gathered some of the production team and some of the music team to be there. And they were having some trouble. And, kind of right out of the gate, we wanted to make sure that we were able to address that trouble as soon as we could. So we kind of went right into a tour of the church a little bit. And he showed me the front of house area. He showed me the auditorium. And, the first thing that I did was I walked into their broadcast unit, and I was surprised because they had two Allen and Heath dLive CM 3500s. And when Ajaki and I were talking before I came down, he had told me that they had a Allen and Heath avantis. And I was like, oh, because we, kind of bought some gear for the avantis to help with the training as I was going to come down there. We actually bought a Dante card, which thankfully is cross-compatible with the dLive. And the goal there was to actually use the Dante card to do virtual sound check. And I was going to use a session I had to kind of help the audio engineers be able to learn how to EQ and compress and so on without having to have somebody on stage being a lead foot, hitting the kick for hours on end as everybody learns how to EQ. Well, anyway, instant surprise actually turned into more surprise, because as the situation began to unfold at House of Prayer, I started to realize that their setup was a setup that I had never seen before. I've been mixing on and dealing with Allen and Heath for a long, long time, but I had never seen a setup like this. And the dLive is a very flexible product lineup in that you can do a lot of different things with the dLive. That's one of the reasons why it's popular, is because of its flexibility, its capability, and so on. But in this case, this was a very specific use case that you could use the dLive system for, and I was very surprised to see it. So they had a dLive CM 3500 at front of house, and then they had a dLive CM 3500 surface and broadcast. And both of those surfaces were connected to the same CM mix rack. Okay. Now the mix rack on the dLive systems is the processing brain. So you have physical XLR inputs, you have I/O ports, you have what are called DX ports, and the purpose of that rack is to serve as the processing brain for the system. But in this case, I had not seen before two surfaces connected to the same mix rack. I knew it was possible, but I did not know the drawbacks of using such a setup. So immediately they started describing to me their problems. They said, Austin, when we move something at front of house, it also moves in broadcast. And I was like, that shouldn't be. And sure enough, we started doing some tests, and when we'd move the pastor mic at front of house, we'd have somebody in broadcast, and they'd say, yes, it's moving. And if we made an adjustment on the effects unit, it would also adjust in broadcast. And they were having trouble where the broadcast person was trying to do their thing, and it was actually mixing the front of house mix as well. So they were really having problems with this. And unfortunately, too, their front of house surface was also having sticky fader problems. So they were like, what do we do about all of this? So I was like, okay, well, let's take this one step at a time. And, they had been used to a pre-Sonos board before, and they had this Allen and Heath for about 2 years. And they had some kind of turnover in the audio department because various people had moved on, and the newest guy that was there wasn't really familiar with the dLive. And the dLive kind of has a lot of layers of complexity to it, that you kind of have to learn in order to use this system effectively. And I do apologize for taking multiple water breaks here. My throat has the holiday special this week. Shout out once again to Fiji water. I actually don't really prefer Fiji water, funnily enough. I bought this in the airport when I was in Thibideaux, or in New Orleans, I should say, coming home from Thibideaux. And I've just been refilling this with my refrigerator water because why not? But anyway, they were having this trouble. And after a little bit of kind of diagnosis, I realized, wait a second, their Allen and Heath system is configured in multi-surface mode. Now, multi-surface mode splits the outputs, the effects processing, the matrices, the mix buses, everything right down in two. So if your system supports 128 channels, which this dLive did, that gets split into a 64 and a 64. And it's a digital split, so channel 1 also becomes channel 65. Channel 2 becomes channel 66. But it still shares the same effects rack, it still shares the same group processing, it still shares all of those things. So as we kind of got into it, I realized their problems were that they had front of house channels actually on the broadcast system, or so I thought. And as I continued to troubleshoot and kind of sussing out how things were hooked up, I came to realize that their system was set up for a front of house and a monitor configuration rather than a front of house and a broadcast setup. So I presume the reason why it was set up this way was that when the system was installed, it was during COVID, and typically you would run a setup like that via Dante or via Matti or some other connection protocol, and those cards were not available at the time. So instead, they used a GigaAce card, I/O card, that went into the mix rack, and they were able to run that secondary surface in multi-surface mode by using the GigaAce card. Well, as we kind of got into it, I was like, man, something is really messed up here. The other problem was that if they changed the gain on one channel, it would also change it in broadcast. So they were having trouble where the gains were being adjusted, and it was just causing so many problems. So how do you solve for that? Well, what we ended up doing was we ended up going through each channel and changing some settings. First and foremost, one of the settings that's in that multi-surface mode is a concept called gain tracking. And the theory there is that if the preamp settings are changed at front of house and you have everything set in the monitor world, you don't want your monitors getting screwed up. So gain tracking will automatically set the digital trim to offset adjustments in the gain. So for example, if you gain up, the digital trim will actually gain down in a corresponding ratio to how much you gain up, and the vice versa is true. Well, the practical implication for that for broadcast is that adjustments to the gain should theoretically do nothing, but if gain tracking is not enabled, if you made an adjustment to the gain, then it would actually do something, and they would also feel it at front of house. So the first thing we had to do is we had to go channel by channel and actually change the settings on those channels to work with the correct gain structure. Secondly, we had to go through and make sure that none of the front of house channels, that 1 through 64, were on the broadcast setup, 65 through 128. So that process took a while. And once we got it to that point, I said, okay, you know what, guys, let's go ahead with our audio training, and we'll get the front of house console set up really well, and then we'll turn our attention to broadcast. So as I was working with Lance, who was the kind of audio engineer for House of Prayer, I taught Lance how to use a groups focused workflow, where instead of mixing individual channels, you actually use groups to help you do group level processing and kind of keep your mix under control a little bit better. And we also did a deep dive on equalization, compression, all the way down to a whiteboard session on both, which was fantastic. Thank you guys for House of Prayer people for diligently tuning in and listening as we went through that content. So thanks for that. And as we kind of got late there into the Saturday, going through all the training and the troubleshooting and so on, we subsequently had the band come in and we did a live mix. And, I work with Lance throughout that rehearsal process to get everything on stage dialed in. We got the drums fully EQ'd and dialed in, and they sounded awesome. We went over things like gain structure, mic placement, drum tuning, all of the things that are needed in order to get things to sound cool and to get things to sound great. And, we got all of that done, and then it was a really long day. I think we went from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. During that rehearsal stretch, late into the evening. And the guys were like, hey, you want to go eat? And I was like, yeah, let's go. And we went back to Big Mike's Barbecue. They had a second location in Thibideaux. The first night I went to Homa, and the second night I went to Big Mike's. So I got Big Mike's round 2. Very enjoyable time. Ajaki and the team came out with us, and we just had a good evening. After that, I headed back to the hotel and probably went right to sleep because I was still pretty gassed from the day. And so I'd love to say that was the end of the trip, but there's still Sunday, so let me take a water break. As we moved into Sunday, for whatever reason, I could not sleep to save my life. I mean, could not sleep. So I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, and tossed and turned. Ended up leaving the hotel for a coffee at 5 a.m., got a big coffee, went back to the hotel, got ready to go. And I had to pack up and check out because I was heading out to the church. And I did so, and I head down to House of Prayer, and the team is there. They're praying, and we get set up to run the Sunday morning. Lance actually mixes the front of house console. I give him some support through the rehearsal process, and then I turned my attention to the broadcast setup. And I ended up having to completely reconfigure the broadcast desk twice, because during the first configuration, we weren't sure if some of the implementation we did there would affect the front of house console. And it turned out what we had done actually did. So we weren't sure if the groups would actually move on front of house if we leveraged those same groups. So we also needed to use those same groups for the first service, because the way that the broadcast, kind of condition that the broadcast desk was in, was not tenable to get through that first service. So we kind of patchworked through that first service, pulled the groups in, and then subsequently had to remove all of that because it was causing issues with front of house. So I ended up putting all of the broadcast channels on the broadcast desk, and then had to resort to DCAs. And believe it or not, you had to also be careful about DCAs, because if you had the front of house DCAs, those would move the DCAs on front of house. And so we had to take the broadcast DCAs. So I set all those up and put together a workflow that would be helpful for the guys to use as best we could. But ultimately, it's a little bit troublesome because the way that setup was implemented is just not tenable. So I did give House of Prayer and Ajaki and the team a full list of recommendations after the visit, and I said, hey, this is what I think you need to do to solve for the root of this issue. I think that you need to add another mix rack here, and also add another Dante card to the one that we've already kind of got, and convert this to a Dante setup where you can also have access to your Dante audio anywhere else you want to around the church. And the church is also in the process of expanding, so they'll be doing a space expansion, and I told the pastor there that it's probably best that they wait until they do that expanded space to be able to get the equipment that they need to take things forward. But anyway, after we got through those two broadcast or the two broadcast services that I mixed, I actually took a clip of one of the broadcast services, the second one, after we kind of got things dialed in. Aja Key, who also goes by Key, sang the new song by Maverick City called Broken Melodies. And man, oh man, did he kill it. So I took a clip of that and put it on the Instagram. So if you want to listen to Aja Key sing Broken Melodies by Maverick City, just came out on their latest record. Follow me at Austin Harman Mixes on Instagram. I would love for you to follow along with all the things going on. Anytime I'm out there traveling, I do document those experiences on Instagram. So please do follow me on Instagram. Anyway, it came time to go home. I did have a Sunday night flight out, and it was the middle afternoon at this point, so I left Thibideaux and had to stop in at one of their famous local restaurants to get some fried catfish first. I did so and ended up leaving out. When I got back to the airport, I had to return the rental car, and they were a little bit annoyed with me because apparently when I booked my trip, the rental car return didn't say 4 o'clock, it said 11 o'clock, and they were going to charge me for an extra day of rental. And I kind of pleaded with them. I said, no, please don't do that. This is not how it was supposed to be. So they ended up waiving 4 hours of my rental, which is the max they could do. So I had returned my rental car with 3 minutes to spare with that 4-hour window from avoiding being charged an extra day. So hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus, for that. Very happy resolution for an otherwise challenging experience. But as I made it back to the to the airport, I had a little bit of a wait there, and I flew to Dallas. And once I got to Dallas, we were delayed getting out of New Orleans, and my flight, I had a really quick turnaround in Dallas, so I had to run through the airport and take a 20-minute SkyTrain around the airport. Super stressful. I get to my next gate, and that flight had taken a delay. But in the process of getting to the gate, I had bypassed all the food options on the way, so no dinner for Austin on Sunday night. That was a little bit rough, but didn't make my Columbus flight and flew home. And thanks to the prior flight being delayed, that flight was also delayed. So I landed in Columbus at 1:30 a.m., 1:30 a.m. Eastern time on Monday morning. Man, what a trip. So yeah, that was quite the experience. Shout out to my wife who picked me up from the airport at 1:30 in the morning. Overall, what a fantastic trip to Thibideaux and to House of Prayer. Excuse me. There are amazing people down there, and what blows me away the most about House of Prayer is that their commitment to excellence and what they were trying to do in Thibideaux, Louisiana, in a small town next to the Gulf in the Deep South, was every bit as good as any of the largest, biggest, well-known churches that you've seen anywhere around. And their pastor was preaching at a very high level, and just an all-around great team and great experience. Thank you so much, House of Prayer, for bringing me out. I truly do love you guys, and I cannot wait to, hopefully, I get to come out and visit again and work with your team some more. Well, that ends the episode 2 podcast here, and just a couple of plugs at the end. If you've made it all the way through, please post in the comment you like alligators if you're watching this on YouTube, because now I will know that you watched all the way through the end. Post in the comments you like alligators. Somebody's going to be looking for alligators on YouTube, and they're going to find this podcast thanks to your comments. So post in those comments that you love alligators. Only those who have watched all the way to the end will catch the fact that you like alligators. If you are listening to this on another platform that's not YouTube, send me an email that says you like whales, and I will know, and only I will know, that you listened to the very end of the podcast. Anyway, I would love to come and visit your church. I am very passionate about building and equipping the church in audio, lighting, and video. My team would love to connect with you, and we would love to help your church with anything audio, video, and lighting. If that's something you're interested in, go to thepenn.group, THEPENN.group website, and you can fill out a contact form there where you can connect with us, and we will be able to help you and your church from there. I'm incredibly grateful and appreciative for you listening to this content. If you have suggestions for the next set, please do leave me a comment, and I would be happy to try to make a podcast or a video on that. I love you guys. God bless you. Happy holidays.